What kid is that?
Ipswich.
Oh, okay.
It was in away days, like random, like grab bag kit or mystery kit.
It's nice. I like the on the chevron.
It's pretty cool,
at the top.
right? Mm-hmm. I mean, this year they're sponsored by Ed Sheeran or whatever the fuck, but
what the fuck?
yeah. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Seriously Loco, the Seriously Crazy fan podcast for El Paso Locomotive FC, a proud member of the Beautiful Game Network and brought to you by Roughneck Scarves and Icarus FC. I'm your host, Phil Bakke, and I'm joined tonight by a man who has not been able to join us for a little while for very good reason, but returns to us tonight, Christian Canales. Christian, congrats, man.
Hey, I'm back. Thank you. It's been a rough, not rough. I won't say rough. It's been a hectic 7 weeks now. I was blessed. My wife and I were blessed with a baby girl on July 6th, and so that has been my priority for the last several weeks. But with the way the last couple of games had played out, it was time to make my return.
Yeah, what a time to come back to it, and obviously I know a lot of people have probably been wondering just why we have been less present, I guess, or fewer episodes, and a lot of like life things going on between you having a baby and Mika traveling and myself traveling as well. It's been a hectic couple of months buying a house and whatnot as also. So
yeah, dude, congrats to yourself also. I don't know if that's already been said on the pod.
I think once maybe, but yeah, anyways, it's been a crazy couple of months for the Seriously Loco gang.
Yeah. Who'd have thought that 2021 was going to be like harder to get together and do this than 2020. I thought we were, over the mountain, but apparently not.
No, that's fair, because it has been tougher this year for sure. But luckily, we're able to get together tonight. We got a ton to talk about, and if you're finding us for the first time, like I said, we are a El Paso Locomotive podcast, and you can find us on all the big podcast platforms, Spotify, Apple, all those. And you can also find us on social media at Seriously Loco, and in particular on Twitter, where you'll find most of our stuff, old episodes and everything posted there. And yeah, we've got tons to cover tonight. We're going to go all the way back to the New Mexico United game, the derby in Albuquerque, the shot heard around the world. So we'll get onto that, and then we'll talk the RGV game that just played out before we preview San Antonio coming up this coming weekend. So yeah, we'll have tons to cover today, and hopefully we'll be able to get through it all for you. Christian, I mean, we start with that New Mexico game in Albuquerque. Always a tough place for us to go, and we don't seem to have like tons of joy when we go to Albuquerque. And it was a little bit of it felt like an old school Locomotive first half, at least, where they were on top for periods of it, but New Mexico United grabbed the lead, actually. Yeah,
they grabbed the lead, and for a good part of the rest, so they scored like in the 33rd minute, I believe, New Mexico did, and then I think, for the rest of that half, it was, we weren't dominating necessarily, and it was just, you just felt that at halftime something needed to happen. The more frustrating part too was that for most of that match, I couldn't feel like we could place the blame on like what we feel is New Mexico's usual tactics of just trying to like break up play. Seemed for the most part until the kerfuffle around the 70th minute or so, that it was a pretty like like clean, fluid game. The types of conflicts and rough tackles that we're used to seeing in this match. We didn't see very much of them. It felt very calm, at least to me, while watching for a derby match.
Yeah, and it played out. It was kind of strange because I think we've gotten accustomed to the fact that New Mexico United, or at least this version of New Mexico United, is not the same, obviously, quality-wise as what it has been in the past. And yet, for this match in particular, it does seem like their best performances come out against Locomotive. And it kind of showed in that way where they hung in there, and in fact, like, they were on top for periods of the game and looked the better team for a little bit, or at least like having the better performance on the day. And it did look like changes were needed for Locomotive to attack a little bit better, and the decision was made to bring on Diego Luna, and Diego had, I think it overshadowed obviously by the events that followed, but Diego had a pretty good impact after he came on.
Yeah, I think I think he was only on there for like 10 minutes. But he did what he does best. He is, shifty. He was got a look or two, gave other teammates, some looks too. So he did what we needed him to do while he was on there.
And unfortunately, it culminates in the sending off. And for Diego, obviously, I think in the moment, it's obviously one of those situations where a New Mexico player grabs the ball. I can't remember offhand who it was.
Tenari.
Yeah, that's right. Andrew Tenari picked up the ball. And Diego's trying to get the ball back because it is a Locomotive free kick, and he's looking to get things restarted. We're down 1-0. Tenari's obviously trying to delay the taking of the free kick, make sure they aren't able to take it quickly, all that stuff. But in the end, is this a case of Luna does let it get to his head a little bit, and the elbow flies out maybe a little bit more than is within the realm of accidental?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. It's a red. I'm not going to argue that it's not at all.
Yeah.
But honestly, I think it's easy to say, well, Diego's young and, he lost his head a little bit. But for me, it's very easy to see that happening to anyone on this team in this match, Sure. We've already seen some players this year. Well, one in particular, Brian, has seen red, just foolishness. And then in the next match, I think it was a New Mexico match. Yuma does the same thing. Has an unnecessary kick out. He luckily does not get sent off for that. But somewhere along the line, we have turned into this team who loses their head more often than they used to. And, maybe that little bit of aggression is beneficial in the sense that, we are having the best season, of our existence so far. But also it's just not what we're used to seeing. To me, when I think Locomotive, I think, just being smart. And It seems like there has been a little less of that level-headedness and, calm decision-making than we're used to. So it's just a little different look.
Yeah, and in that moment, I think it was really interesting, some of the reaction, and obviously a friend of the pod who listens really regularly but is a San Antonio fan, Harry, he mentioned Diego's behavior as being, well, he labeled Diego a shithouse, which was interesting because I really don't think of Diego as that player. So it's interesting that sort of started to develop outside of El Paso's, like, I guess our circles on Twitter. Is there anything to the idea that Diego is a shithouse?
No, not at all. I mean, one bad decision does not a shit house make, in my opinion. And as far as I can remember, we haven't seen anything of the like, particularly from Diego at all this year. So I think that is an inaccurate representation of who Diego is as a player.
And I mean, so that we're not labeled as homers, like I think you could safely say that Yuma and Bryam are both shit houses, and we would wholeheartedly agree. Like there would be no issue. We wouldn't fight you on that really at all. There's probably a couple of more. I think like in certain situations, Richie certainly could be a shit house, at least in the eyes of the referee. But no, I would say like Diego in the way that he plays, like, I don't think he often finds himself in those sorts of situations. Like, I think he's primarily being fouled or, I guess like he's on the receiving end more often than he's some sort of like aggressor in those situations.
Yeah, definitely. And I might have to fight you. I wouldn't call Bryam a shithouse. I think that he has, he pays his dues over the season.
True.
To get a knock in every now and then. But I can't disagree with you on Yuma at all.
And Yuma's let the dark side come out like a little bit more this season than the last couple.
That captain's, man, it's like the ring in Lord of the Rings. You leave it on for too long, and it starts eating away at your soul. Gonna see a Yuma Smeagol hybrid by the end of the season.
Mark yelling from the side. I'm picturing like that opening scene or whatever, where what's his name, Elrond is yelling at the king, like, who has the ring, like, destroy it. So I'm picturing Mark. I'm picturing Mark yelling like, "Don't kick him," and Yuma just turning and being, "No." So yeah, Diego sent off. I think. Well, I will say that my initial view of it was definitely colored by the fact that I'm thinking like, okay, well, Tenari knows that he shouldn't be picking the ball up. Like he's being, like, he's instigating this episode. But yeah, Diego's elbow flies out a little bit, and the bottom line is he should see red. So I think like I reacted a little bit more strongly in the moment, like emotionally to it. Certainly felt like the game was kind of getting away from us too with the sending off, and Diego had made such a positive impact that I'm thinking, well, okay, that's kind of game then. 1-0 down, going to be tough to find anything. And then possibly one of the most iconic moments now in Locomotive's short history, the walk-off. We almost saw, or I thought we were almost about to see, obviously earlier this season, Allison for Liverpool late last season, Allison scored. Logan Ketterer goes up at the final corner, doesn't score, but does get credit for the assist.
Did he?
Yeah, in finding Bahner, which it may be debatable, but with the deflection that it maybe takes through. But this goal has now reached kind of like, despite only being a couple of weeks old, it feels like it's already among those kind of like legendary moments that we'll look back on, as this club goes on to exist 10, 15, 20 years, and we'll just like point to it as like one of those sorts of like seminal moments.
Yeah, just one of those remember when kind of things. And yeah, I think there's a couple of things that contribute to that. Obviously the opponent is one of those things. The fact that it ultimately contributes to this streak that the team has been on, and somehow I think, like, the player itself kind of adds to kind of like the lore. Obviously, we'd be celebrating this no matter who put it in the net, but for at least for me, there's something different about it being Matt Bahner than if it was Gomez or if it was like Dylan.
Yeah.
Because how many more goals might we see Bahner score in his time here? That might be his only one.
Right.
And because that's not what he's here to do.
Right.
So that, and then of course, the celebration, like you can't say enough about it.
He said that he had planned on doing that, like with his goal. He had hoped to do it at Southwest University Park, I guess the story goes. But the fact that 98th minute equalizer, after the loads of stoppage time were added on, a little bit of time wasting maybe coming back to bite New Mexico in the end. But the ball falling to Bahner having the reacting quickly enough to put that shot on target, score the goal. And then, as you said, him taking off, like sprinting, shirt off immediately, like didn't even think twice about it. The shirt's off practically before the ball's in the back of the net. And him taking off just towards the stands, and the noise that you can hear, like in just that reaction from that hostile crowd with that small, like, but very vocal El Paso contingent, where you can hear kind of the distant away cries, shouts of joy, but the overwhelming noise is just like booze raining down, and it's amazing. Like it's sweet. It just that sweet symphony of dead silence followed by just like people booing him, and Andrew Fox picking the shirt up and holding it up Messi style in front of the curse. Like, you could not ask for a better moment from this team. But it also shows like how intense and how driven, I think, and how emotional this team is about representing, like, not just themselves and not just like being a really good team. If all they were focused on was like the results, and obviously like that's what they're doing, they're trying to win. But if it didn't mean anything outside of, hey, that's a point, like the reaction just wouldn't have been there in that like visceral emotional way. So I think it just reiterates like what we saw against Austin, and like what we talked about with all of the stuff going on, like obviously with Rico, and then like just the connection between these players and the city they represent is different. Like, not every USL team has this level of emotion, like from the players that play for their teams. And so the fact that they take representing El Paso so seriously, and take like the rivalry seriously, take representing the fans seriously, it just reiterates to me that this is something that's like, they've built something different. And like, I can't give enough credit to the players and Mark for reinforcing that connection, which is so often kind of lost in American soccer. When you have these kind of like stood up franchises or whatever, it can be tough to have that connection. So the fact they've fostered that is really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And it would be very easy, I think, for the players to, because in the end, at the end of the day, a lot of these guys are friends. They've built careers together, in their years past. And so when you see the emotion on the field, it's not that like they're like so proud that they got one over, like on their, against the opponent, because at the end of the day, they don't, like you said, at the end of the day, I think it's a point to them. But when they're on the field and they are they have that badge on their chest, they do understand that they are not just playing for themselves, and they want us to see that and to understand that. And so, yeah, just to add on to what you're saying, it's just another reason why the fans here and the team support each other the way they do.
And yeah, it's just it was such a cool moment, and obviously like immortalized now with all the different like videos and everything, and
It's great for content.
yeah. No, that's right. Kenzie's just been feasting recently. We joke about the Kenzie cut each week now, and we'll get on to the goals that she got to shoot in this next game against RGV. But that point, it's so interesting. Like, we obviously talked after the 0-0 in Albuquerque, and now talking after this 1-1. Like, it's amazing how different two draws at the like kind of the same opponent, same location, but the two draws felt so different in that the first it was like like maybe we should have gotten more. This one it was definitely a draw that felt like a win.
Sure, it is one of those things where maybe you take the heat because I think that sometimes we will criticize another team for celebrating a draw like a win, but in this case, I'll take that all day given the context of the match,
and it further cemented, I guess, like New Mexico's draw streak up to that point, and New Mexico still like having trouble getting out of that cycle. So the greater context, I guess, so in terms of New Mexico's like playoff aspirations, also taking a pretty big dent with those couple of points dropped. So yeah, it was the most thrilling draw that you're likely to see, and what a way for Matt Bahner to get his first goal for Locomotive, and a celebration I think that we'll all remember for a long time.
And say what you will, about the quality of either team, either New Mexico or ourselves, in any given year so far, or at any given point, but this matchup is dead even. After 3 seasons, each team has 2 wins, and there have been 6 draws in between. So you don't get it after 10 matches. How can you have a more evenly contested rivalry there?
That's crazy. That's so crazy. Moving on from that New Mexico game, obviously Locomotive followed it up with a match against RGV, who, as you predicted, like RGV have been up around, they've been our closest chaser, I guess, in the Mountain Division, pretty much this entire time, and so.
They have taken a dive recently.
True.
To be fair.
I guess they're level with Colorado Springs now.
Yeah, and I mentioned earlier, I think it has to do with... I don't know what happened to Tyler Derrick, but he has not been playing in their last 4 matches, and they've given up 11 goals in those 4 matches. So that certainly appears to be at least part of the cause of their decline. So whatever's happened, they'll need to get him back if they want to continue to make me look like I know anything.
Well, as we get into this match against RGV, the lineup that Locomotive brought out for this one was a lot closer, I guess, or this stretch of games that we've been on, like we've been really lucky where most of our unavailable players are due to suspension rather than due to injury, which we're much more used to. So in this one, like pretty much a full strength lineup minus young Diego.
Yeah, it's about, like you said, as full strength as it can get. For the last 2 weeks or 3 weeks, maybe, watching the broadcast, the injury report has been empty. So this is who we are. And now, we can feel a little more comfortable about the players that we have, loaned out and stuff, because I think that we've found a nice balance here.
Yeah, it's the depth has now led to, with the return of Andrew Fox and being able to give rests to Borelli and be able to rotate through guys like, Nick Ross starts on the bench. Dylan's on the bench to start. Being able to give rest to those guys is going to be so important throughout this season. And we talked about kind of the rough stretch, but this, now that we're kind of into the dog days of summer, like this is a period where traditionally we've had trouble and not been able to field a lot of depth. And so it feels like a luxury right now to be able to have like so many options to be able to rotate through.
Yeah, and you got to talk about the quality of the depth too. It's been said before, but after 60, 75 minutes to be able to bring on Nick Ross and Dylan Maris is unfair.
Yeah.
So Mark and the rest of the front office have just been able to build, and they've been very intelligent about who they keep and who they let go and that kind of stuff. So it just goes to show that I don't think that Mark is long for El Paso, unfortunately.
Yeah, he's built quite the squad, and it may eventually lead to a dismantling here, at least his departure. But the odd thing about this game is, like, despite the strong lineup to start, coming out of the blocks, it didn't look very good.
This was a rough first half. Probably one of the uglier halves that we've played all season. We just looked tired. And I don't know why. We got a full week of rest. Wasn't any particular reason why we should look so out of it. So it was a very uncomfortable first 45 minutes.
Yeah, and it was it was odd because this season I think for the most part we do joke about how much better we play in the second half, but we've also been kind of a fast start team this season where we come out of the blocks like really firing and just look like we get all over teams, we get an early goal, and then we give ourselves that little bit of cushion to be able to, hey, let's see out the rest of the half and then see what we can do in the second half with a lead. This game, it felt like, I don't know, there was something about, I don't know if it was about how we were set up or the guys that got the start, but we just looked out of sync. Like, there were so many times where someone would come short to receive the ball and someone would play a ball like over the top, and and then like vice versa, where a guy would make a run and the guy would play it thinking he'd come short. And it just seemed like that was happening like really frequently in the first half. And I can't put my finger on exactly what was going on, aside from the fact that I do know that RGV actually did a really good job of beating our press, and that was leaving like a lot of space in between our midfielders and our defenders, because our midfielders would get caught up field, and once that press was broken, then RGV had like that entire space basically between the boxes to operate in. And it was, in fact, for the opening goal, it was a press, which we actually cause a turnover high up the field, but then give the ball away quickly. And the defender, I can't remember who it was. Maybe it must have been Pimentel. He plays just a straight ball over the top for Amo to chase, and he does. He chases it down and makes no mistake, one-on-one. Like, in the end, it's a good finish from Elvis Amo, but a tough one to concede, given the fact that one straight ball over the top basically beat the entire 10 outfield players.
Yeah, for sure. And it was James Murphy actually with that assist. But yeah, so
well, we could talk about him a little later.
It was one of those goals where, you know, what happens and you're just kind of left a little bit dumbfounded, especially because it happened so quickly. You know, just like you said, from one end of the field to the other, and all of a sudden, you know, Amo's running free with no one to beat but Logan, and he does his job and puts it in the net, and we find ourselves down almost at the end of the first half.
Yeah, it was a weird one because I don't think we haven't seen this get beat like that very often, but the only other time that I can think of is it was a little reminiscent of the goal that Real Monarchs scored. Who's that big dude who plays for Real Monarchs?
What is our nickname for him?
Gabriel Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
What's his name? Now I can't think of it. He is... I'm looking at them right now. Played for them in a little bit. Something with an S. No, Briggs. Artist Briggs.
That's right.
But yeah,
remember because he's built like a linebacker, like Lance Briggs. But
yeah,
anyway.
6'4". Are you kidding me? But yeah, it's exactly that goal, and I think it was our first match against them, where he just beats everyone and has an easy shot on the net.
So I think it's a risk reward thing where, like, obviously if we're going to be more aggressive, our midfielders aren't going to be able to provide like the cover to the defense, but at the same time, like, I think if we know that Amo's trying to run off the shoulder, then we probably need to show him like a little bit of respect and like let him take it down and make him beat you on the dribble or something like that. Don't let him, you know, run into acres of space. And it's just an unfortunate goal to give up. And I think it, you know, obviously it's addressed because RGV don't find themselves in that sort of situation again. Although they maybe do get one more good opportunity that we could talk about in a little bit. But the one thing that I wanted to address about the first half, and you mentioned the guy who grabs the assist on the goal, James Murphy, his challenge in the first half on Lucho Solignac was brutal. And I can't believe that he stayed on the field after the referee had to physically get in between him and the Locomotive players to stop like a fist fight from breaking out on the field, because he easily could have caused a long-term injury to Lucho.
Yeah, I mean, there was nothing mentally good about that tackle. You know, 2-footed, studs up,
yeah,
you know, into his shin, you know, not his ankle, his shin. And, you know, there's no way you could say that there was a, you know, good faith attempt at winning that challenge. He went there fully intending to bring Lucho down.
And the thing that got me about it too was the fact that he did like the classic, I don't know, it was almost like he was trying to get sent off, because he dives in 2-footed and whiffs on a challenge right before, like the second before, and then gets back up and dives in 2-footed on Lucho and doesn't get the ball at all, like just catches Lucho's leg clean with the studs. And I'm thinking the way the referee ran in, like, I'm thinking he's showing red, like as bad as he had been up to that point, and as like lenient as he was being with the whole thing, which like fine, let the kids play sort of thing. When a tackle like that goes in, that is genuinely like season threatening, you have to show red. Like you must show red because it then leads to stuff later in the game. Murphy is like whatabouting like throughout the game as Lucho was taking every opportunity to kick the shit out of this dude, like all around the field. And luckily the ref didn't see anything about it, but Murphy was crying to the referee at every opportunity. And
it's like, bro, you should have assault charges filed against you right now.
So anyways, I just, not to belabor it too much, but the bottom line is Murphy, the thing that sucks is USL never, even when a red card is shown, USL will never in the highlights package show those like controversial incidents. I think they just want to like gloss over. They literally only show like goals or like saves. They will not show anything that was controversial. So like the fact that challenge is essentially like erased from the memory, like the collective memory, is insane. Because if this were any serious like soccer nation, they would be showing that challenge like on local El Paso news for the next like 2 months of like, hey, remember this, and how the league didn't do shit, and how like the referees are horrible, and like all this, like there'd be all this rhetoric around it, and it's just not how USL is.
Yeah, no, I mean, this is football in America, I guess.
So, so we come back for the second 45, and I think the overall story is that Locomotive come out in the second 45, and at some point a switch gets flipped, because we came out, it seemed like it was kind of more of the same, seemed a little bit like, hey, we need to make something happen, and RGV find themselves through on goal. Christian Sorto has a chance, lobs Logan, like chips the ball over the onrushing Logan, and Mechack Jerome gets back and changes the game.
Yeah, I mean, that. Not only does he, keep the game alive, but it's like you said, it's like one of those things, the switch flips, I think, as a team. One of just those momentum changers, you can just feel it, that things are probably going to go differently from this point on, because he has single-handedly like woken everyone up just by making them realize how close they were to losing. I think when something like that happens, it's kind of like when you have like a near-death experience, I guess, and you just, after that you decide, I'm gonna go live my best life now, because we're on borrowed time.
Yeah.
And the players say, well, we have 90 minutes, and we could have pretty much just lost the game had that save not been made. So I think that does have that kind of effect on the team.
And Harry, we ragged on his take about Diego earlier being a shithouse, but he did call that out after the game, of just like how immense that moment was for Locomotive, and Mechack essentially like keeping it at 1-0, obviously preventing a goal like that as good as scoring a goal. And the effect it had on the momentum from there is there was an air of, well, one, there was a change in the sense of urgency, it seemed, after Nick Rawson and Dylan Maris came on. It seemed like there was a level change a little bit in terms of the team's sense of urgency. And it culminates initially in one of the finest goals that you will ever see an El Paso Locomotive player score, with Lucho Solaniak's just absolute wonder goal.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, this might be like bad podcast etiquette, but like I really just want you to like talk through your thoughts, because you tend to be a little more like poetic than myself, and I think that's just what this goal deserves.
Yeah. So this goal, like, one, the idea to even do it is crazy. Like the idea that he has this, as he's coming into the box, Andrew Fox floats in a cross. It's obviously at a height that he'd have to volley it. Like he's not going to be able to head it. It's too low, but it's a little bit high to hit traditionally and like make sure it gets on target. Plus he's under a lot of pressure from a defender. So the idea that Lucho uses his frame and has the idea to, I'm gonna back heel this as I'm spinning in the air on the volley is just it's insane. Like that sort of improvised goal, I think like you only see a handful of those in any league in Europe. It's not like there's not a whole lot of like other goals you can point to that look like that. So I was immediately reminded of a goal that a really just iconic, I guess, like Italian striker, Fabio Quagliarella, who's been around for a million years. He scored a goal playing for Sampdoria, I think, who he played for a long, long time. That was really similar in that it was, that improvised finish where he's back heeling it in the air, and so I think what's interesting is we gravitate naturally towards the banger, like the traditional banger goal. Like in the US, we think, okay, the further away you are, like the more impressive the goal is. And I really just want to like hammer home that in terms of like level of difficulty and just like sheer improvisation, not to mention the importance of the goal in the context of the game and the eventual result. This is probably the greatest goal that we will maybe. I mean, it is up there with the Edson Partita like overhead in terms of like improvisation and just like sheer level of difficulty. The thing is that Edson's goal, and this is maybe a debate that I don't want to wade into, not 100% sure that he meant to do it. Like, that's the only... Lucho, make no mistake, like, Lucho is trying to score from this and does. So it's just a stunning skill, and I think we know that Lucho is one of the most technically gifted players that we have on the roster, and just in terms of, like, what he can do in manipulating the ball, but I was in genuine shock when that went in, because it was just like, I can't believe my eyes. Like, I can't believe that he just did that.
Yeah. So, like, funny story. So we were watching this game. We were at my brother's house on Saturday, cooking out. And it was, it was getting later. The game started at 7:30 here, so it was probably at this point 8:45, 9-ish.
Sure.
So my brother was holding my baby in the next room, just trying to get her to sleep. And we're all watching the game, and this goal happens. And my dad, who is like, he likes sports, but he's not particularly like a huge like soccer fan,
sure,
necessarily. But like, he goes absolute apeshit, like screaming, and we're all just like, "Shut up! The baby's trying to sleep." But that just goes to show you like the level of excitement and entertainment that this particular goal brought. To even kind of the casual fan. It doesn't take like a soccer purist to even understand how ridiculous this goal is.
Yeah, it's an unbelievable goal, and obviously, like, in the context of the game, it starts us down a path that it really felt from that moment that it was just a matter of time before Locomotive found the winner. The problem is that we didn't have that much time left, and so in the end, it's approaching the 90th minute. It's getting late in regular time. They're pushing and pushing for this goal, and in the end, a Leandro Carrillo who had come on gets just on the end of a cross and keeps it in play, which seemed fairly innocuous at the time, but it falls to the feet of Sebastian Velasquez, who, with a little bit of a head fake, a little bit of a back and forth, creates just a half a yard for a shot and squeezes a shot in at the near post, and sends the swap into Raptures.
Yeah, just another, fantastic goal too. Obviously not like the same level of athleticism as the first one, but like you said, the composure to take your time and find your spot. Especially given the the context, in it a regular time, trying to get the 3 points at. I think you see a lot of players just, kind of just kick the ball as hard as they can at the goal and hope something happens. But yeah, the patience to find that space, and it's a difficult shot too, a hard angle hit, and the fact that he's able to do it is just just one of those things. It was just that it was gonna be that night for us, after Mechack made that save, seemed like everything was going to go our way the rest of the night.
And the added context too of that being Sebastian's first goal, like since rejoining, I think obviously, what a time to grab your first goal back in Locomotive colors. But I think we talked like a couple, maybe the last episode, with Mika, we talked about how Sebastian's, I think, matured like since he's come back, and he's kind of found where he's making his impact with Locomotive. And I say matured like as a player, but he's fit himself back into the system. But in this game in particular, it was one of those where in a game where a lot of people were kind of all over the place, and there was, some good things about most people's performances, some questionable things. Sebastian throughout was looking like the guy who was going to make something happen. And so I'm glad he gets his reward in the end with the goal, because he had put in quite a performance. Like, given the fact that the team didn't look great through the first half, he actually stood out as one of the players who seemed to be trying to make something happen. And in the end, he makes the victory happen.
Yeah, his goal. I'm glad that his first goal back has had purpose. I think that I'll be the first to admit that I was very openly critical of how he left the team, and very wary of his return. But you can't deny that he is a useful, a very positively contributing member of the club, and so I'm glad that he got to have that kind of the context, I guess, the situation where that is where he makes his mark. His
sure,
his tangible mark.
Yeah.
He's the kind of player where he can have a great game and have nothing to show for it, on the score sheet. But this is something that will be reflected, quantitatively.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think for him, obviously he's been looking for this, and it was interesting. He was definitely taking off for home plate, in the initial, and he wanted to swing for the fences himself, do his own Matt Bahner impression, and Richie kind of wraps him up and denies him the celebration.
Yeah, that was brutal, Richie. Like, let the man have his. You got to let him celebrate before you jump all over him. That's rough. That's rough.
But it was.
Sorry. Real quick, another point of Richie. Since when did he become like our free kick taker? That's been happening a lot more, and
Yeah.
it is even happening with Dylan on the field.
Right.
And I believe that they're both right-footed, so I don't understand. I'm just curious when that happened and why that happened.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. And like, I mean, Richie's got quite the history in terms of like taking free kicks and all that, going back to the NASL days. If you look on YouTube, you can find I think when he was playing for Ottawa Fury in the NASL, he has a banger of a free kick that he scores. So he definitely has history, and he's hit the woodwork for us a couple of times now from
New Mexico.
Yeah. And delivered in the corner for Bahner's goal, and now he's delivered in a couple of corners as well. But yeah, I'm not sure what sparked the change, because it was like Dylan. It was like Dylan primarily, and then obviously like if Dylan wasn't on, then it was like Diego was taking them for a period of time, and then and yeah, so now Richie's worked himself back into the rotation. Maybe he was just like, hey, I'm going to show you youngins how it's done. The icing on the cake comes late, just deep into stoppage time. There's Lucho holds the ball up, he's fouled, and Dylan latches onto it, knocks it past the defender, and then squares up with, is it Colin Miller? Is that the, yeah. He squares up Colin Miller, looks him dead in the eyes, and then chips him from 18, and just a clean way to finish things off. But the goal itself, impressive. The celebration and the outpouring of joy, not just from the fans in Southwest University Park, but the team and the staff, as Mark Lowry took off down the field to jump in the melee down there in the corner in front of Eighth Notch.
Yeah, and it's just fantastic to see. From the conversations we've had with Mark, this is exactly what he's been, asking from them, from day one, is to, make no mistake, leave the game, and have there be no doubts as to who the better team was that game. And when you end up with 3 second half goals, in 23 minutes, that's exactly what the situation is. There's no question as to who not who is the best team in this match, not who is the best team in this division, not who is the best team in this conference, but you're hard pressed to say that this is not the best team in USL Championship at this moment.
It was like just the perfect way to finish it off. And I think like one of the things that's been so impressive, obviously, like putting the context of these two matches that we've talked about together, just this team's mentality and always finding a way, whether it's to win in this case or finding a way to get a draw. This team just, for whatever reason, like there is no, too late for them. And I think there's just something particularly enjoyable about the fact that this team now has these like late goals, these moments to latch onto, and it just adds on to, like we talked about with Bahner's goal, it just adds to the like lore of this team and like the history and the connection. It just adds, like, they're just building these moments and building blocks that will, ultimately like create what is, the foundations of the history of this club. But they're doing it now in the context, not just of, oh, what a cool moment. Like I'm glad we have that. It's what a moment as part of, like you said, the context of this is one of the best teams in USL. So it's what a moment in what a season. Like it's not just for shits and giggles. It's like adding up to something concrete, which hopefully is something that, like, as we're talking at, toward closer to the end of the season, hopefully we're talking about some serious, another serious playoff push. But yeah, just the fact that we have these really cool moments as part of what is already an amazing season, is just awesome. So yeah, I think we all know, based on what we said earlier, normally we would talk about the Shithouse 11 and we talk about our nominees. We would talk about who could end up there, but it's kind of tough because I think we know our choice already. I think we've already said it.
Yeah, you don't make that tackle and not get, a unanimous vote into the shit. So yeah, I mean, without a doubt, there is no other candidate except James Murphy.
James Murphy, welcome to the Shithouse 11. He's going to slot into what is a very crowded midfield, I think. So we're going to have to take the Yuma strategy and start deploying some of these guys in other positions.
Hashtag hella midfielders.
Yeah. Before we move on to San Antonio, I wanted to just take a moment. We talked about this match being part of a greater context of the season. And I wanted to just put Locomotive's form, not just in context of this season, but in context of their previous two. And right now, as we're looking at the USL standings, as you said, Locomotive not just top of their division in the mountain, which they are, and holding a sizable lead as well. 41 points through 18 matches is, and second place, Colorado Springs with 29. So a 12-point lead at the top with a game in hand as well over Colorado Springs. And then, but in the context of the rest of the league, 41 is more than anybody. And Louisville City, who is the next closest on 40 points, has played 19 matches. So we actually have a game in hand over Louisville as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting just to see how long, this team can keep this up. Because just from the way that they look right now, it's the end at this point. Everything just looks to be positive going forward.
The other thing that has stuck out, obviously, I think first and foremost has just been like the defensive record of this team. Obviously, no clean sheet this time against RGV, but 12 goals allowed through 18 games. Last season, we played a 16-game regular season and allowed 14. So we've actually improved on what was already a staunch defensive record last year.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I think if you ask, a lot of people, particularly Mika, the clean sheets have seemingly been hard to come by this season. Mm-hmm. But, in reality, it's we've only allowed 12 goals. So even in those games where we aren't keeping the clean sheet, we're rarely giving up more than one.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think most importantly is there was that stretch where it didn't even matter who the keeper was. Everybody was getting a clean sheet. I think right now, when you look at this team and the way that they set up against their opponents, every goal they allow feels preventable. Like there's not really a goal that I watch and just think, oh wow, like they sliced us apart there. Like, nothing you can do, fair play, great goal. Like, I think this team probably goes back into the locker room after they concede. Like, each time they concede, they're probably at the end of the game, like, picking that apart and saying, like, how could we let this happen? Which is crazy for a team that has allowed significantly less than a goal a game. Like, and almost 0.5 a game. Like, that's crazy. But I know, like, mentality-wise, like, that's how they're approaching each game, is that there's no reason that anybody should score on us. Like, in terms of how we set up our team, how we set up our defense, the keeper we have, like, basically every goal we concede, people view as, like, an abomination.
Yeah, and it's rough. It's hard. Heavy is the head. But that's just the kind of team that they are. They are just like obsessed. We are obsessed with success, and being perfect. And for the most part this season, they managed to achieve that.
And things have been better at the other end as well. 30 goals through 18 matches. Not the most prolific return in USL, as I don't think we have ever associated Locomotive with being a super prolific goal scoring team. But we are just over halfway through the season, and we're a mere 14 goals away from matching the season 1 total in a 34 game season. And we're actually only 12 goals away from matching what would have been our doubled total through 16 games last year. So, we're right on track to absolutely blow away our offensive output from any previous year.
Yeah, I mean, this is, I said it, earlier after the match this weekend, is that this team is just doing things that they've never done before. And so as a fan, this season feels special, and you just can't help but feel that this is just going to be a year of continued success.
Let's get on to San Antonio before we close things out. San Antonio FC coming up this Saturday, and it's Locomotive making the trip to San Antonio. So set your watches for that Central Time kickoff. But going to San Antonio, obviously last time we went, we got the 2-1 win. Locomotive have had the upper hand in the series so far this year. And San Antonio's been going through a little bit of, ups and downs. I guess, honestly, recently their form has been, as long as they're not playing Locomotive, they've been pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, that's about fair. And to be I guess to talk about where their form is now, I think it's hard to tell because they haven't played in so long. They've had a couple games postponed due to COVID outbreaks. Not as far as we don't know if it's within the team or what. They just describe it as an involved person or whatever the term is for it.
Yeah.
So they haven't played in, I think, about 3 weeks. So it'll be interesting to see that on Saturday.
Yeah, it'll be 20 days since their last game, a 2-1 win over RGV. So that it's going to be really interesting. I mean, if Locomotive had 20 days off between games, I could tell you right now, like, the first half's not going to be pretty. But do you think San Antonio being able to get some people back, being able to maybe work on some stuff, do you think that gives them maybe a little bit of an edge, or do you think Locomotive's momentum coming out of the RGV game is more important?
I think that the rest will have been good for them because, like you said, I think one of the reasons why they're in the spot that they are in terms of the table is because they have had such a rough year with injuries.
Yeah.
So hopefully they've been able to take advantage of this time to do a little bit of rehab. We also know that they have been doing a fair share of business too. They recently, today, today, Wednesday, it was just reported that they brought back Mitchell Tainter and sent, who was it that they sent? Can you remind me?
Cuello?
Cuello.
Yep.
They sent Emil Cuello, to Orange County? Where was it?
Sac Republic, I think.
Sac Republic. I know it was California.
Yeah,
teams.
I think Mitchell Tainter was at Sacramento.
So they're that defense, and he's a good player. We had to face him last year in the playoffs, and he is a big guy. So if he's available on Saturday, that's just going to be another obstacle to overcome. But I think that the rest will do them good. I think that they're gonna come out ready to play. I'm sure the fans are going to be hungry, being that they haven't seen them in a while now. So I think that it's going to be a hostile for Locomotive, but that hasn't stopped us this year. So
it's a little bit of trivia for. If we cast our minds back to September 12th of last year, the last time that Mitchell Tainter and Luis Solignac were on the field at the same time, they were actually both wearing San Antonio FC colors. And Lucho scored a penalty in that game, but so did Josue Aron Gomez. And Mitchell Tainter scored a 90+4 own goal to win the game for El Paso Locomotive. I believe it was an Omar cross.
Yes.
That was deflected in by Mitchell Tainter in stoppage time to give Locomotive a win in Southwest University Park. So the hopefully Mitchell Tainter's contributions in this match will be similar.
Oh yeah, I'm ready for him to put in the net again, so long as it's ours. So, hopefully he hasn't been working on his headed accuracy.
And hopefully Lucho finds the net again for us this time.
Oh, Mark is just absolutely feeding him, all the propaganda this week to get him hyped up to score.
Mark absolutely feeds off of the former club narratives. He loves it. And we've definitely, for anyone who's listened to the pod before, you guys know that you never pick against the guy who's playing his former team, because Mark always gets him keyed up for these games.
Absolutely.
Well, all that being said, we do have our pick'em that's been going all season. So for those who haven't listened before, we pick the score. We pick the score. And a goal scorer, if there are goals, if we're picking goals, and you get a point if you correctly predict the score. You get a point if you correctly predict the goal scorer, and you get a point for the result itself. So if you pick a win and Locomotive win regardless of the score, you get a point. And if you get all of those, you get 4 points, I think, right?
Yeah, it's a little bit confusing, so I can understand how we may have missed some of the finer points there. But yeah, you're for the most part right. If you whether if you pick a win, loss, or a draw, that's a point. If you pick the result and you get with the exact score, that's actually 3 points.
Right.
And if you pick the correct goal scorer, that's 1 point. So
that's what
between the
possible total,
a possible 4 between picking the result, the score, and the goal score. So possible 4 points. And I gotta say, we haven't, I haven't been around the last couple of weeks, so there hasn't been an update recently. But I'm killing it this year, Phil. Um, right now, the way the leaderboard currently stands, I am at 21 points.
Oh man,
Phil in second with 14. So there's quite a gap there.
mind the gap.
Yeah.
And yeah, wow, taking over the Ostradamus from title from last season.
Yeah.
And I was just about to celebrate my comeback because I was dead last for quite a while. So now my second place is feeling pretty comfortable right now.
Yeah, I will say you went 3 weeks without scoring, and with the exception of with the United draw, you've gone 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 straight weeks with points. So that's not nothing. It's not nothing. But Mika is a close second. She's got 13, and Austin is disappointing this year. He's been kind of a bust. Austin in last place.
Sophomore slump or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
Third year slump? I don't know.
Austin coming. Well, this is we didn't have it the first year, so yeah, sophomore.
True.
This
Yeah,
is
sophomore
the sophomore, and so he's in last place with 9th. So I think it's time for him to, I think he's playing for dignity at this point.
Well, we got Mika and Austin's picks, so I'll go ahead and read those, and then we can go from there. So, Mika chose a 3-1 Locomotive win with Lucho on the score sheet. So Mika following the law of Lowry, which is always pick the guy who's playing his former club to score. Austin chose a 3-0 win with Diego on the score sheet. Diego should be back from his suspension for the red card, so he should be eligible for this one against San Antonio. And to be fair, has already netted against San Antonio this season twice, I think, in both the home and away
in both
games.
games now. Yikes.
Yep. Yeah, he scored the 71st minute. He scored what proved to be the winner in San Antonio, and then in the return game in El Paso, he scored the opener in the 29th minute. It was that nice little 1-2 he played with Nick Ross, I think, that that he scored the opener with before Aguinaga added the second in a 2-0 win. But yeah, so Diego and Lucho, safe picks, I would say, for this one.
Yeah, those are good shouts. But what do you got, Phil?
So they went heavy on goals. I think that we don't often see. I mean, you could probably count on one hand games where Locomotive have scored 3 goals on the road. But they are coming off of some good momentum. I'll go for a 2. I'll say it's the same scoreline as the July 28th game in San Antonio, 2-1. And I'm actually gonna go for. I'm gonna go for Sebastian to get a second. Just kind of, I think we know that he likes to ride the waves, like maybe a little bit streaky in terms of goal scoring. So I think, I think Seb gets a goal in this one.
Okay.
Off the bench, probably. I don't think he starts this one. So a little bit of a risky pick.
It's hard to predict that midfield, when all 3 of them are healthy and available. Mm-hmm. But I'm thinking personally, I think it is going to be a low-scoring affair. I'm not going as goal-heavy as some of you guys are. So I'm going to stick with a 1-0, and just to not double up on anyone's prediction, I'm Gomez gets a goal.
Yeah, I I think between hitting the post late in the New Mexico game and some of the saves that have been pulled off against him, Aron is in that unlucky window, which hopefully he can break out of and grab a goal for himself. But yeah, there you have it. We'll see how things turn out when Locomotive go to San Antonio on Saturday night. I'm sure there will be a Loco Spaces with Duke and Joe Rodriguez from the Striker Texas. So I think there will be Loco Spaces on Twitter. Make sure you keep an eye out for that. And I don't know, I may actually be able to be available for this one because I'm not traveling somewhere, but yeah. So I think we'll be back for that, and then this is it. Now that we're hopefully we can find some rhythm ourselves with this schedule. Not quite as grueling as it was through the beginning of August. So hopefully we're in a more normal rhythm from here on out.
Yeah, and with going into this exciting part of the season, I know we're all looking forward to continuing to, comment on Locomotive success, and hopefully we have lots more positive things to talk about as we, just past that halfway point of the season.
Yep. Plenty to look forward to for Locomotive fans, and luckily, we'll be following along with all of it. So hopefully we'll be back after the San Antonio game to talk about another Locomotive win. But until then, everybody stay loco.